Read the book, join the conversation. That's what Whatcom READS encourages. It's a program put on by all of the public and academic libraries in Whatcom County and Bellingham and community partner Village Books. This year's book is Your Heart is a Muscle the Size of a Fist by author Sunil Yapa. Today, Sunil joins us in an exclusive Skype interview to talk about the book and also about his upcoming visit to Whatcom County, including a main stage event at the Mount Baker Theater in Bellingham. The 2018 Whatcom READS book is titled Your Heart is a Muscle the Size of a Fist by author Sunil Yapa. And Sunil joins us today via Skype. Now, where are you? You're on the East Coast somewhere right now, right? Where are you?
I am in a farmhouse in central Pennsylvania. I just shaved my beard and cut my hair because I was doing a kind of retreat from society and try to get some work done kind of thing.
This story is a story that was destined to be written because you wrote it twice. And then your laptop was stolen. Tell us about that. What happened there?
Wow. Well, I started this book in 2009 when I was actually in graduate school in New York. I graduated, I had about 100 pages, I think, for my thesis, and I moved to Chile, where I had lived a couple times before that. And I was living in a little beach house. I mean, it was so idyllic. This little beach house on top of a cliff, no internet to distract me, no printer to print my book. And I actually finished the book while I was there. It was 604 pages. And I remember that because I didn't have any backup. In fact, my backup was I would put my laptop in a baking tray and hide it in the oven.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So then I came back to the U.S. It survived all that. I don't do much baking, so it was fine.
Good.
So then I came back to the U.S. and I was working as a traveling salesman at the time, which is a whole other story. But I was in Chicago, and someone broke into my hotel room, and because I didn't have internet in the idyllic beach house, I hadn't backed up the book at all. And someone stole my laptop, and poof, 604 pages gone. I mean, there was cash in there. There was a Kindle. Who cares?
Yeah.
I didn't care about any of it. I thought, my book. Oh my gosh! And you know, I spent about 3 months just trying to pretend it didn't happen. Didn't think I would write it again. Didn't even ask myself if I would write it again. It was just, I had never written anything that long, and the whole, just the I don't know, the shock of it. I guess I couldn't think about it. And it's crazy because about 3 months in, it started bubbling up in my brain again. And not the terror of losing it, but like technical questions like, oh, what if I did this scene like that? Or what if, you know, in the end, I think it was really a gift because the original book had something like 65 characters.
Whoa.
It was this crazy book. And I also got a chance to sort of re-examine what I wanted to write. And I really asked myself, do I love reading books without a main character and fake encyclopedias? And my answer was, no, that's not my favorite kind of book. My favorite kind of book is about characters who disagree with each other and that I get really involved in.
Right.
So in that way, it was a huge opportunity to go back to a subject I already knew really well and pick some characters that were going to be really dramatic and really interesting to me.
So let's talk about that subject. That subject is the WTO event that happened in November of 1999 in our region, in Seattle.
Yeah.
Why did that event resonate with you? What were you inspired by?
Yeah, you know, just in my personal life, it was an incredibly important event to me. I studied in my former life before I was a writer. I studied economic geography, and so it was a really important event in my personal life, and I really wanted to go. And I thought it was this beautiful moment where globalization, what we call globalization, really had a human face on it, and I thought it was a really beautiful moment. As a writer, it was very strange. As I was growing up as a writer, I never thought to write about the things that mattered to me personally. I kind of wrote what I thought the New Yorker would want to publish. And so when I realized that I could write a book about a recent American historical event and about something that I cared deeply about, it sort of exploded in my mind. it's hard to say where a book comes from because then all these other things started happening. So one thing that I can point to where I knew I was on the right track is I found a photo um, that Alan Sekula took, who's a Seattle photographer, I believe. And it was of a woman on her knees, during the event or the protest, and she'd clearly been hit in the head, probably with a baton. It was bleeding, and I thought, why is this woman here? She was there kind of expanding the rights of other people. And I thought, what an incredible moment. What courage it takes to go in the street and risk getting tear gassed, hit by a baton, pepper sprayed, put your body on the line for people 3 continents away. Amazing. I thought that was beautiful.
How and why did you choose these characters? Well, now that we know that originally there were 65 characters in the first book, and there's 7 in this book, how and why did you choose those?
Richard Price said to me once that for him, writing dialogue was like running downhill. Everything else was agony about writing, but dialogue came very easy to him. I find writing very difficult, but creating characters, obviously if I made 65, is something that I really enjoy. It's sort of the natural part for me.
Yeah.
So creating these personalities, they came to life very quickly for me. The ones that I focused on, so there's Victor, who's a 17-year-old biracial, or he's 19, sorry, he's 19. He's biracial. He has been traveling the world, kind of lost. His mother has died. He comes back to Seattle, and I really see him as the main character. And physically, he probably has the most in common with me in that at 19, I had hair down to my back, and I'm also biracial, and he's trying to sell weed on the streets at the time, and I may or may not have done that. Then there's his father, who's the actual chief of police, who's white and is in charge of whether to tear gas these protesters or how to manage the situation. And I thought that's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Then I think it wasn't really conscious. My writing style is just generally I'm very interested in telling all the sides of the story. And so I wanted some other characters. One of my big projects with this book was we saw very often, and we still see, anytime there's one of these events, we see the 30-second news clip that says violent protesters clash with police. And I thought, my God, it's so much more complicated than that.
Right.
And it's real humans on both sides of it, because I didn't want to villainize the cops. So continuing the characters, we have the son, Victor, we have his dad, we have 2 police officers who are in the street. And my first temptation was to make them the villains. That would be a fairly easy choice. And then in later drafts, I really had to push myself or ask myself, is that accurate? And also, if these are protests that are about empathy, about caring for the other person and putting yourself in another person's shoes, well, then I need to push myself as a writer to try to empathize with all of my characters and try to understand what it must be like to be understaffed on the streets in Seattle and trying to do the right thing, but absolutely overwhelmed.
I have to say that normally books that have different characters and different perspectives from these characters, like you're talking first person on a lot of these or from their perspective, I usually get really confused. But this book, you were so clear on who was talking or whose head I was in when I was in their head. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's a big compliment. Because from a technical point of view, I probably spent 2 years trying to figure out how to arrange the chapters so that when you start a new chapter, you not only know what character you're with, you're sort of emotionally back in that story. So you don't have to recalibrate every chapter, which would be so annoying, you know?
Yeah.
So that took a long time to get that right, and I'm very happy that it flows for you. Yeah, the other characters are, so we have the son, we have the chief of police, who is his father, we have 2 rank and file officers, we have 2 protesters who are pretty hardcore. One is a former preacher, the other is my favorite character, who is King, who they're both, if we use the phrase, militantly nonviolent. right? They really believe in nonviolence. But King, she's nonviolent in the same way that someone in AA is sober. Like it's a day at a time for her being nonviolent. She's really angry. And I have to say, if Victor is the most like me physically, King, this young woman, is probably the most like me sort of emotionally. Um, at times, one expression of just being so frustrated and angry at times with the way that democracy seems to get subverted by all these global trade agreements. And, did we vote for these people? I don't remember voting for anybody. So
Right.
it can be very frustrating. And I know a lot of people who feel a lot of rage and anger about it and powerless too. And then you can't forget the seventh character so those six characters happen, are sort of interlocked and the story moves forward through them. And then we get brief intermissions. And this is probably my other favorite character. We get a delegate from Sri Lanka, where my father is from, who is actually here to go to the meetings. He actually thinks that going to the trade talks will benefit Sri Lanka's future. Now, it's a bit fictional. Sri Lanka was already a member of the WTO. I kind of used some of the story from Vietnam, but I really wanted to use Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka's colonial history, and also someone who wanted to be there and was not really on the cop side and not really on the protester side and was trying to make sense of it.
It's just wonderfully done. Now, this must have been a huge undertaking research-wise.
I didn't know what I got into until I was into it. So I wrote about 100 pages, I think, when I started working on it, and tried to write as much as I could to see how much I knew, because I thought I knew a lot, and I didn't. I got really lucky, though, on a couple things. One is there's this amazing archive in the basement of the University of Washington in Seattle of all WTO-related material. There's like 25 boxes of videotape, people sent in their turtle costumes, first-hand accounts, photographs, just amazing. So I went out to Seattle pretty early on and just buried myself in that library. I also got really lucky. I was living with, at the time, a guy who had been in Seattle and was an activist at the time, and he had, this is a throwback, he had zines. Do you remember blogs before there were blogs?
Yep.
So these are, basically just 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper that people fold, and then they write their essays, draw cartoons, write little diary entries, and then send them out to all their activist friends, right?
Yep.
He had a bookshelf full of these from that time period. I mean, it should be in the Library of Congress. And for a novelist, that is gold, because instead of people's telling me the story, I could go and see what they were telling each other.
Right.
It wasn't right?
Right.
And that was incredible. And then the gold mine was that when I went to Seattle, I discovered that all of the police traffic over the CBs had been recorded and was saved. And so I got, I think in the archives at City Hall, they gave me CDs of all 5 days of the scanner traffic.
Wow.
And it's incredible. And it's the exact parallel to those zines that were on Tennessee Jones's bookshelf. It's the cops talking back and forth to themselves with no interpretation. And that really, really helped me write those characters.
Sure.
The first time that I heard a cop nervous, and you can hear this huge noise building behind him, the drums and the flutes, and it's echoing off the buildings, and you hear him asking for help. We need some help down here. The first time I heard him nervous, a cop nervous, I thought, ooh, I can write this in a human way.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you hoping people take away after reading this book?
One of the things that I would like people to take away is, all 7 of those people think that they're doing the right thing. And in this time, I don't know if I wasn't alive during the Vietnam War era, but I can't really imagine a time since then when the country's been more divided in terms of not understanding each other, and just like having no idea where the other person is coming from. And so maybe it's a reminder to try to understand each other. And I think the book is really, in some ways, a father and son story inside of a story about what it means to be at a protest. And it brings up a lot of issues, but ultimately, it's really about whether this father and son can reconcile with each other. And to me, you asked if I was surprised in my research. I was actually surprised in the writing because they're so angry at each other, this father and son. And so what could be seen as a difficult, dark book, I don't think it's dark, but it deals with, heavy issues.
Yeah.
To me, what I'm so proud of it is, and surprised by, is that it ends up being a hopeful book, a very hopeful book, I think.
Well, we are thrilled that you're coming to visit. Thank you so much for writing this book, and thank you for coming to Whatcom County. Thank you very much.
You can see Sunil live and in person March 8, 9, and 10 at various events around Whatcom County. For information on dates, times, and venues, go to whatcomreads.org. I'm Deb Slater for BTV in Bellingham.